as a massage therapist. Like, I'm shuffling around the table all the time, picking up charge, touch the guest.
That's so funny.
It's horrible.
Well, maybe you can like incorporate it into like, what is that?
A chakra.
Chakras too.
chakra.
Oh, sure. Right. Yeah. I didn't think of that. I was thinking those little wires that go like that physical therapists
Oh, TENS
use.
units?
Is that what it's called? Yeah. You could just be like, it's just my
TENS unit.
Yeah. Just non-plugged in, but plugged in.
Yes, exactly.
Welcome to In the Act. It's a radio program on process in the creative life. Creativity does not just start and stop with artists. We all make aesthetic or guiding decisions. Our aim is to talk through the process and investigate how we choose to express ourselves and live creatively. We are connecting with people about their lives, and that's the subject of our show. Broadcasting from Mead Public Library in Sheboygan, Wisconsin, I am Erica Hunsinger, and this is In the Act. And today's guest on In the Act is Kathleen Quigley. Hello. She is a mom, daughter, sister, artist, runner, writer, photographer. I did not know about photography. She's giving me signals, which is really fun. The miming. Welcome, Kathleen.
So mime is not one of my careers.
Not yet.
Not yet.
I would say yet. Yeah. And I would also say constantly evolving and incorporating new. Risk taker, I feel like you are.
Yes. And I think it's a funny place to be on the brink of 60 to feel like I'm just beginning, like to really come into my own creatively.
Wow. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What has brought you to that spot to feel that way? Because that's a really poignant thing to say.
Well, I think I'm a late bloomer always, from like puberty on up. And so I don't know if it's a matter of not being able to focus my attention on everything at once. And so it's like, okay, I'm almost ready to retire. So now I can like let my creative juices flow more freely. Yeah. Or if it's a matter of, I had cancer a few years ago. So that was kind of a kick in the butt to actually start my process because I had gone to grad school ages ago for creative writing and put that on hold to raise my son and constantly repaint my house. So, and then I realized that was just a matter of kind of moving without moving. So if I changed all the colors in the house, then I was in a new location without actually moving.
Wow, that is profound.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it took like 3 paint jobs to realize that's what I was doing.
Wow. What in that 3 paint, like the last, what was it that triggered then? Like,
that epiphany?
Yeah.
Well, when I was a kid, we moved every year. So I was constantly used to like upheaval after a year. It's like, oh, it must be time to pack up. So I was painting my living room. And I was thinking, why? Why am I doing this? It was a perfectly good color. This lovely salmon I had. And I was painting it and I thought, wait a minute, I've been here like 18 months now. I should be moving.
Yeah.
And so it was just more or less, so that's what it is. And so now when I get the urge to paint, I think, okay, let's ride it out and just paint again.
Wow. Can you time yourself? Is it almost like
it's pretty cyclical. It's about 12 to 18 months.
Wow. Do you then pre-plan a time away or to set aside for yourself?
Oh, I paint.
Oh, you do paint then? You end up painting?
I do.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I, move all the furniture. The dogs get painted. The furniture gets painted. Or I have friends that I can say, do you need anything painted? And I paint for them.
Wow. So painting really is part of that process, though.
Yes.
And then you move into writing?
Well, I move into writing. I think a lot about writing even when I'm not writing.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's true for any artist.
Sure.
So a lot of my best things come like when I'm stepping into the shower. It's kind of like you're entering a portal.
Yeah. I think that resonates with a lot of people. Mm-hmm. That downtime, reflection, me space, because it's only you.
Exactly.
There's a cleansing involved. There's a washing away or a renewal, I think, with water.
A body of work.
Body of work. Yes. Yeah.
So to speak. And, my memoir is about cancer primarily. And so that's, of course, about the body. So I think. Absolutely. And truth.
And I didn't know that you had a memoir. I know that you had a blog.
I did write the blog during the whole cancer thing, mainly because my son was a senior in high school at the time.
Okay.
And I have a lot of friends all over the United States and a few overseas. And I thought I could either scare him half to death, telling everybody everything over and over again ad nauseum, or I could just write a blog. And if people wanted to read it, they could read it, and he would be protected from cancer.
Oh, wow. That's a profound way to use your skills and share about yourself and connect with people, and also have this holding nest for your son that's so important.
Right. And tap into the writing that I had squashed for so many years.
And that's when that blossomed out.
Yeah, it bubbled.
Wow. That's a lot to process, and as an artist individual, and a lot to process with a new diagnosis that's puts you in the face of your mortality.
Yeah, I didn't think too much about death so much.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm just making light of it to some extent, but, breast cancer is, everyone loves the boobs. So, there's so much money thrown at breast cancer.
Yeah.
That if you're going to have a cancer, and I know this sounds like Pollyanna, it might as well be breast cancer because there's so many research dollars thrown behind it.
Right.
And, men love boobs, women love boobs, they're all over, so everyone wants to save the tatas.
Yeah, it's totally true.
Exactly.
It's hard for me to balance it because it's you're so funny. You have such a joie de vivre, which is also your love of everything French. And well, goodness, I love that so much.
What? The blog was Bon Voyage Boob.
Bon Voyage Boob.
And so our friend Kate, she was lovely enough to let me host a little Bon Voyage Boob party right before my mastectomy. So that was great.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. And I mean, gosh, you just need to have people around you to support all these different things that we have to go through in our lives. But specifically, that's a big deal to have something removed from your body that's that impactful in so many complex ways.
Yes.
As a mother, as a sexual being, as a just part of your own self, knowing. Yeah.
It's been transformative.
Yeah. So, and that sort of all led into this memoir that you're writing, or you have written.
I have been writing it, so I'm not really good at having linear conversations.
Oh, that's good. That's fine. Yay.
Yay. Yay, non-linear.
Yeah.
So in 2015, there's this wonderful place in Michigan called Interlochen.
Yes. Okay.
And they have an adult creative program in the summertime. It's just a way for them to bring in, I think, more revenue, but also reach out to the greater community.
Sure. And
I have mentors and former teachers who are involved with Interlochen. So, I had been seeing it in my Facebook feed for some time, and I thought, I'm going to just take a week and go. And so, I reached out to one of my mentors and asked her which track she thought I should do. And she said, well, with your blog, memoir. And so I did.
Oh.
And so I started working on a piece, and actually, I thought maybe I could convert the blog, but a blog and a memoir are actually two different things. And so there was a scene I wrote, and I think it's hilarious. But maybe some people don't find it hilarious. But it was this scene where after my mastectomy, I had been pretty happy-go-lucky during the whole cancer process. And I thought, oh, this is, something I can handle. No problem. I can make a joke about this. Well, I must have been squashing some anger.
Yeah.
So my best friend was driving me home from the hospital, and we got to this goofy intersection in downtown Sheboygan Falls where some cars can turn without stopping and other people have to stop. Well, she didn't realize that, so she stopped and went. Well, this old man, lost his shit in the intersection. And so he's waving his fist at her. So finally, when we all proceeded out of this intersection bottleneck, and everyone in Sheboygan Falls is for the most part kind and polite. So they were all just waiting.
Right.
And so he was in front of us and then we were behind him. And he got out of his car. And I got out of Kathy's car, and I was freshly bandaged all over my chest, drains, dangling from my rib cage. And I went up to him and I was like, I can't even repeat what I said to him, but we were having this altercation in the middle of the street where I was just like dumping all my cancer rage on him, and he had no idea.
Oh, yeah.
And so he's, of course, swearing back at me, and he was old enough to be somebody's grandfather, maybe even a great-grandfather. And so finally he gets in his car, and I got in Kathy's car, and she's like, I said, sorry, I haven't done that in a long time. Yeah. And my brothers would be like, oh, of course she can do that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, there has to be some expelling of all of that shit you said. I mean, oh my gosh, and freshly bandaged and oh my goodness, Kath.
Yeah, so it was hilarious, both in the moment because I was outside of myself saying, oh, I've got to write about this.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah.
So that was the first scene that I wrote for the memoir.
Wow. Well, that really sets the stage for a lot of, I'm going to be honest about my emotions. I'm going to be present with them. I'm going to share these ugly things about myself, or maybe that's not ugly. I take that back because I don't necessarily calling emotions that are heavy or, have that's not ugly. Maybe the situation developed into something a tiny bit ugly, but there's always this learning
for sure.
And you have to get that stuff out.
And I think as a female, we're told to be kind and be nice and polite.
Oh, 100%.
And, not speak up. So I think that to actually express rage is not feminine in our society.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
So I had luckily just lost half my femininity, so I was given permission.
Ooh, man. Is that how you felt?
I just felt angry.
Yeah. Yeah.
But part of the whole thing is not only was it the breast, but it was the ovaries and the fallopian tubes, anything that could produce estrogen. So.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think without estrogen, you find out, or I was questioning what's really female.
Of course.
That's a lot about what I write about now.
About what is female.
Yes.
Yeah. And rediscovering that with yourself, rediscovering your artist self within that as well, and questioning and reflecting on that. It's a profound stage to go through at that time. Continuing on, but at that time there was just this acme of information and feelings to process.
Ooh. Lots of feelings.
Yeah. In terms of creativity, that sort of propelled you back into yourself or into your writing spaces. And
so that incident simmered.
Yeah.
So that was September of 2014. And I didn't write about it until June of 2015. So, and I think that's true for a lot of I can't say a lot of writers, but for me, things simmer. They have to percolate before I can actually process them.
Totally. Yeah. I feel very similarly. I call it steeping. Yes. I think of it like tea, where you just you're growing these herbs, and some are kind of bitter and some are sweet, and you just kind of put them in this pot, and it has to stew for a while or steep, and then it can come out. Even though I'm an abstraction painter, it's sort of it still is a similar process of that for me. It's not just about like composition and their feeling and states and behind it. There's this whole inside person.
Exactly. I think that, and I think, visual art is very similar to written art because you can't just approach it, with a paintbrush and a canvas and think, I'm just going to throw these things on there.
Yeah.
There's always something that directs you to the canvas or to the typewriter or journal or whatever your thing is.
Yeah.
Music, dance. I think that as much as I would love to be spontaneous, I'm pretty analytical, so I have to think first.
Yeah.
Before. And actually, I think most of my friends would say, no, you speak before you think, which has gotten me into a lot of trouble, but that's okay.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about it. Well, I don't think it's either or though, or that it has to be either or. It's both, and it depends on the context of the space and your people and what's going on with yourself. Mm-hmm. Whether you speak first or you're analytical first, right? Yeah.
Right. But I think so. I'm a massage therapist in addition to writing, so I have hours of my day where I just spend silent. So I can just rehearse all kinds of things in my head all day long. So it's been really helpful with the writing because I can think while I'm massaging.
Yeah.
And then also approach my computer a little bit more prepared.
Okay. Yeah. I was going to ask you about what your process was and how that kind of gets kickstarted or how it simmers.
So I usually do best with a deadline.
Okay.
But
self-imposed?
Either self-imposed or oh man, I have there's a journal I want to submit to, so I better look at this thing that I just haven't touched for months.
Right.
And then, sit down at the keyboard and fix a few things, move things around and hit submit and then hope. And
Gotcha.
So of course, you never hear right away with writing or anytime you submit, I think for creative, either painting or, whatever.
Yeah.
There's a moment from when you submit and then you or at least I submit and then I doubt.
Yeah. Sure.
Was that good enough? Could I have changed something? And then I read it and I'm like, oh, there's a typo.
Right.
Or, something goofy. And so occasionally after I've submitted, I've been lucky enough to be able to change things.
Yeah.
And then got rejected anyway or accepted.
I mean, that's part of the whole artistic process. I feel like we have to be so aware that that's so tricky because you want to be accepted and you want to be connected and you want to be published, but you also want to try as much as you can to keep your praise and your ego in check with yourself.
Exactly. And I think, so rejection, it can touch on so many things from childhood on.
Oh gosh, yeah.
So it's kind of oh, I'm the girl that wasn't chosen for kickball or, whatever, or, oh, another dance I didn't go to.
Yeah.
So, rejection can, definitely needle you in some ways, but I really don't try to let that get to me.
Yeah.
Because I've been accepted by some, so that's fine.
Right. And there's
always
a
balance.
Absolutely. There's always going to be somebody interested. We can't have this many people on the planet and not have people interested in something that you do, whatever it is.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think that's what's great about art, writing, music. There's always an audience for somebody's work.
Absolutely.
You just have to find it.
Yeah.
I hate talking about myself.
You do?
Yes.
Well, let's talk about the process. Let's talk about other stuff. We can talk about that.
Oh, it's all me. Yeah. I think some people are really good about, like in artist statements and stuff, where they're like, oh, my work is about the degradation. I guess I have to backtrack. I was in a play, Play It Again, Sam. It's a Woody Allen play, and I got typecast as the intellectual girl. So I had this very dark speech. Like Woody Allen character comes up to the woman in this art museum, and he says, what do you think? And she's like, it's the ultimate degradation, blah, blah, blah. And, she goes on and on and on. And he said, oh, what are you doing Friday? And she said, committing suicide. And he said, what about Saturday? He's just desperate to have a date. Right. And so then my character walks off stage, but it was just strange, to me that now I have to be in that place where I'm, my work is not about the ultimate degradation, but I have to talk about what my work is about. And that's odd.
Oh, gosh, yeah. Welcome back to In the Act, talking about In the Act.
Ooh, Erica.
Well, it's such an important point that you bring up, right? Is that, okay, wait, I'm backtracking now. So if you're talking about the process of making and writing for you specifically, or just in making in general, but then having to reflect and dialogue about that process, or about the work that you're doing is a whole other area that's super complex, and usually you don't have anybody to do it with.
Right. Solitary.
Yeah. And so you just have these little feelings inside of hey, do you think that's okay? But they're not really talking to each other. They're just this feeling states that you kind of gauge for whatever your thermometer is inside of I think that's okay. Or, oh, I want to work on this more or something like that. But there's not this connection and exploration and discovery with another human being many times to kind of probe and look through the little crevices, or to ask about something that you're yeah, I didn't want to talk about that. That was going to be an erasure.
Yes.
Or that was an edit. So yeah, I feel the discomfort. I hear you. And I appreciate you being brave enough to talk about it today.
Yeah, I think discomfort is a place that we have to sit in as writers, because if you're not uncomfortable when you're writing, you're not getting to the heart of the matter, I don't think. So the writer needs to squirm in order to make the reader squirm.
Yeah. Right.
And there have been times where I'll cry while I'm writing, just because I'm touching so many raw nerves.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Do you keep a journal with you too? Do you?
I'm really horrible at that.
Yeah.
I should be better.
I don't think there's a should.
Yeah, that's true. My mom says should is a 4-letter word.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Good one.
It is. So I try not to weaponize it too much with her. So,
right. Yeah.
So, I know there are all kinds of tools, and I always have pen, and I always have my date book, my calendar.
Yeah.
So if I do write down notes, I do that.
Okay.
I have a journal at home. I have multiple journals at home. By my bedside, I have a journal, and then I'll wake up in the middle of the night and scrawl something in there that I hope I can actually read in the morning.
Sure.
And then I look at it in the morning, and I think, I'm not quite sure what that was, but it was brilliant, whatever it was. And then I just have to blow it off because I have no idea what I wrote at 2 a.m.
Right. Yeah. So so much of your process then is really in your head and distilling ideas, and you can hold on to those things?
Sometimes. So
Because that sounds so hard to me.
Yes, occasionally I have had an epiphany during a massage.
Cool.
And I'll have to...
By giving a massage.
Yes, by giving a massage, because something will come to me because of that quiet space, and then I'll have to like jot down a note that actually makes sense and go back to the massage. So, sorry. I was actually thinking about massaging that person, but I had to like take a little creative break. But it's only like 5 words, 6 words.
Yeah.
But I do have to say, there was a lady I was working on this past summer, and she had glioblastoma. So if you don't know what that is, it's the type of brain cancer that Ted Kennedy had. Oh. And a friend of mine had from high school. And it's usually fatal. So, we kind of like laughed about cancer, as only 2 cancer people can do.
Right.
And so while I was working on her, I was thinking about all of like the codes that people have with cancer. And so I thought, I wonder what her codes are.
What does that mean?
So like acronyms are everywhere. Like I think for charting, they just go, oh, you're on the ACT regimen, and that's adriamycin, Cytoxan, Taxol.
Oh.
Or, so they basically, there's so many acronyms.
Right.
To like shorten.
Right.
What doctors talk about with cancer.
Like a whole other language.
Exactly.
Sure.
So I was thinking to myself, wonder what hers are. And then I was doing like a little riff in my head. And I was like, I wonder if I could just write it like a dictionary, because I keep trying to find a way to make the memoir seem different, because so many people think, oh, cancer memoirs don't sell. And it's not true, but it has to be something, something really powerful, something really different. And so I came up with what I thought at the time was brilliant, but apparently it's been done, which is like a lexicon or a dictionary. But mine will be different, I promise.
Yeah.
So I was just thinking about this whole thing. And then I took a class through Hugo House, which is in Seattle. And I was reading, after like the second class, I was reading about the teacher. And apparently she had just written what they call an abecedarian. So it's basically where you go through the alphabet.
Wow.
And, whatever your thing is.
Oh, right. Yes. Okay.
So I think there have been poems, that you're like kids bring home from school, like.
Totally. Right.
Yes.
Yep. But, we get that a lot. And as a reflection in this moment too, like I think that, my work is abstract expressionist, right? It's intuitive painting. It's been done.
Kandinsky.
It's been done.
Exactly.
I mean, Willem de Kooning and the whole abstract expressionist movement in the 50s. And, but I'm still making the work that is meaningful to me, correct, that is unique to me in its own way. It's definitely within that genre, but it is unique to me. And I think that there's a specialness to what I'm doing that's different from other people's, even if there's links,
yes,
and bridges, and that's okay. I'm not trying to. So much has been done.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, if I'm using the same tools as they were using, it's oil paint and wood or canvas and turpentines or safer ones now, but the same sort of tools. So you're gonna. And I'm of like the same area. We're going to make similar things. And I think that in some ways there's a celebration with that instead of a competition. And I have no doubt that your voice within how you're going to create that is going to be unique and different and interesting.
Exactly. And I wish I knew.
It was a long way around.
Yes, but no, I agree with you. I agree with you. And I think that, I've heard, musicians say, there are no new songs, just how you write them. There are no new books. It's just how you write them. So there are no new paintings. It's, it's like,
yeah,
I think if we, as creative people, like stop ourselves thinking that I can't be new and innovative and creative, we would just like be plumbers.
I mean, I think plumbers might be interesting as well, by the way, but
right, yes,
but
very.
Also,
but they have to there's a certain thing that they have to do. They have to be within code, and
I mean, I think plumbers are much like heart surgeons. They're doing pretty much the similar things.
Yes. Yes. Keeping the valves open.
Yeah, exactly. But, but in terms of, there's no one like you on the earth, and there never was. There was never a Kathleen Quigley. And talking about a creative, unique individual, like all of us, there's never anyone else like us with all of our unique experiences and perspectives and personalities, nature, nurture, whatever, and however those things affect. But so you're going to make something special that is of you, that is new, because it is yours.
This is true. And I think you and I had pre-talked about like permission and censorship. And, I think that's like a perfect segue.
Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about permission.
Yeah.
So permission, I think, so much of like writing for me is trying to be true. And
how did that hit me so hard? Trying to be, wait, say that again. Sorry.
So much of writing for me is trying to be true.
Yeah.
And I think where that comes from for me is that my mom has always told tall tales that I accepted as gospel truth. And now I'm finding out that some of them might have been stretched a little bit or a lot of it.
Right.
And I've always wanted to say, what's real? What's true? And I know that that's a matter of perspective also.
Sure.
So I can only write, like I tried, so I have to backtrack, I guess, again. I started out writing autobiographical fiction, thinking I had to like change names, whatever, in order to take my childhood experiences and bake them into whatever I was trying to make.
Yeah.
And then I just thought I'm doing a big disservice because I really just want the truth.
Yeah.
And so I had to like change gears and do creative nonfiction as opposed to creative fiction because I don't feel comfortable writing fiction.
Yeah.
And actually the only story I've ever written, and by story, it was actually a heavily researched piece that I've kind of fictionalized, but didn't really. So I changed some names, and it was about a serial killer because, I can't really write about anything light. So it was just a flash nonfiction that impersonated as fiction.
Cool. That sounds really interesting.
It's kind of dark.
I kind of like the dark.
Me too.
Kind of balances me. I always feel like I'm on the ceiling somewhere smiling. The dark kind of brings me back down to the ground or something. Balance is important for me.
Yes. But, so I think that with the truth, then I have to be careful about hurting people.
Yeah.
And then, or actually I don't have to. I'm afraid of hurting people. So sometimes it's just easier to like step back and then reapproach the work because I can't prevent myself from writing what I need to write.
Yeah.
And in order to not hurt feelings. And there are some stories that are other people's stories that I don't have to write. So like some family stories, that's not my story.
Right.
So I can like draw the curtain on some things.
Yeah.
Because that's not my goal.
Of course not. No. I mean, you're not writing for revenge or...
Not at all.
Yeah, writing for truth, self-expression.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly. And keeping the humor in, too.
I mean, that's part of who you are.
Right.
Does your... I know you're thinking about... when you're in quiet spaces, when you're marathon running, or if you're working on something, if you're quiet and you're creating in your head, do you have other spaces that allow you to do that?
So, walking my dog, I actually, think about quite a lot while I'm walking my dog.
Yeah.
And he's a little bit of a nutcase, so there's only one walk I can do with him where we don't encounter that many people, or if we do, we can give them wide berth. That way he doesn't eat anybody. So I feel bad because I'm always so hyper vigilant on my walks with him.
Oh,
so
sure.
I'm never really able to be in the moment, but I will occasionally have thoughts, and then I'll like get out my phone and like jot down a note if I have like what I think is a brilliant epiphany in the moment.
Sure. And do those experiences go into your memoir though too?
The walking
like
rowdy?
You're like walking rowdy or massaging or
to some extent they do.
Yeah.
Because they have to. They're part of me.
Right.
And if all I wrote about was cancer, it would be boring.
Ugh,
exactly. Who wants to hear about cancer? So, there's so much more to life than death.
Yeah. Or do you ever have like stuck places within your momentum of creating?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's necessarily like writer's block.
Yeah.
I think what it is self-distractions. So if I'm having a moment where I know I should be writing, there's that should word again, and I find that I'm, like cleaning the toilet.
Right.
It means that I'm avoiding something on the page. And I know there's another writer, his name is Joshua Moore, and he's written a really great memoir called Model Citizen. Fantastic. But anyway, I was on a Zoom class that he was teaching, and he said, when I'm writing, my bathroom is so clean. It's because anytime he gets stuck, he's just like cleaning the grout with a toothbrush or something.
I mean, it is sort of a loosening. Again, that sort of like cleansing. I don't know if it's like, I almost don't even think about it as a distraction. I feel like it's part of like the movement that has to happen to get into spaces. And maybe it's because there's that repetition. You don't have to use a lot of executive functioning to clean your bathroom, that it allows your brain to kick into another area of respite or something.
Exactly.
That allows that to kind of not feel as pressured and up against a wall or something, That's
true. I'm going to quote another writer.
Udo.
Yes, because I think she's brilliant and funny, and she wrote a great memoir. So Anne Lamott, she wrote Bird by Bird, Instructions on Writing in Life or something like that.
I read it. It's great.
And in the beginning of the memoir, she talks about, when she first started writing, she had to have all the dishes had to be clean. And she said, now I can write with cadaver in the sink. So, occasionally I lift some soapy water and think, is there a dead body in there yet?
That's great.
Yes. So I'm trying to channel my inner Anne Lamott.
I love it. It's great. Welcome back to In the Act. Oh, we don't have to. Yep. Okay. Welcome back to In the Act. I was just thinking that one of my favorite art pieces I've ever seen is by a friend of mine named Robert Taylor. And he was in a bookbinding or bookmaking grad school, I think. Wow, that was just... Anyway, his graduate show was this lounger chair that was like extended open, like a lazy boy chair, and at the base was a welcome mat, a doormat that had like a Wilbur, a Wright brothers quote on it, something about flying.
Yes.
And then, do you know it?
I've seen it.
Yeah, I don't know it. I can't do that stuff. My dad is, you can do that. I can't do that stuff. Anyway, there was a garbage can next to it, and then out of the garbage can or into the garbage can, whichever, there were all these crumpled white pieces of paper. And then on like strings above like the area that a body would be, reclining in this pose, they were sort of above the head as well. And so it's like this idea that really elevating the idea that rest is a form of creativity.
So important.
That pause and taking that time for reflection or being, just feeling yourself just in that whatever non-executive space is, allows for so much creativity to happen just on its own, just naturally. Things come together. That silence, I think, is a similar space that I wanted to share.
I think that's true. And I think when you were talking about that, I was thinking about the pandemic.
Yeah.
Like when we were first on lockdown and, initially I thought, wow, I have all this time, but I didn't know how much time.
Right.
And so I thought, how involved can I get? Or do I only have like a 2-week window or what is it? And so I think with that, like kind of like a paralytic limbo.
Ooh, can you tell me what paralytic means?
Oh, I'm going to make it up because I don't know. I don't even know if it's a word, but I'm going to make it up right now.
Yeah, do it.
On the spot. It's a new word in my
I support.
New word in my lexicon. So
awesome.
I think so I'm going about like paralyzed. We were like basically
yes.
We didn't know anything at that time.
Right.
Other than that the world was falling to shit.
Right.
And so I was in limbo and paralyzed. And I think a lot of other people were as well. And there were like a lot of my friends who were like avid readers. Couldn't even read. So, I don't even think I read an entire book during the 3.5 months of the lockdown.
Wow.
So it was like, doom scrolling was like my new hobby as opposed to actually reading anything that would have been, I guess, relaxing or cathartic.
Sure.
I couldn't focus enough on the page. And I think that we were all in this state of imposed rest, but we couldn't rest.
Yeah.
And
wow.
It was like we all needed a vacation from that, but we couldn't have one.
Still can't.
But I'm reading now.
Right. What was the first book you picked up? Do you remember? I'm just curious if you know.
I don't remember. I know Model Citizen was one of the first.
Who's wrote Model Citizen?
Joshua Moore.
Okay.
Mohr. It's funny. It's this memoir where he doesn't hide from anything. And he had been a major drug addict, a big drinker. He was a writer. He had written a few books. And basically, he had a series of strokes at a very young age. He's, I think, about 40. And so he was thinking that maybe the drugs caused the strokes, but they didn't. It was a congenital condition. And so he's basically writing up against a deadline that he doesn't know if it will ever hit.
Oh.
And he wanted to basically write this memoir so his daughter would know everything about him.
Wow.
The good, the bad.
Right.
And it was really frank and very good. I'd recommend it.
Wow. I'll definitely do that.
So that was probably one of the first. And then, oh gosh, I could make something up, but I'm not going to.
Oh, no, you don't have to. Yeah.
Just lots of short stories.
Yeah.
But definitely that. And then because I go to these writing conferences, I meet all kinds of really great creative writers. And when they publish books, I get their books and I get to read them. And so
cool.
Patty McNair, she was one of my teachers at Columbia College in Chicago.
Fabulous.
She had a very funny collection called Responsible Adults that, again, she doesn't hold back. So lots of great teachers as far as being true.
Yeah. And you said conference, and I guess I was thinking about your residencies.
Yes.
But those are separate.
They're separate. So I was awarded 2 residencies recently at Regdale down in Illinois.
Yeah.
And I know everyone knows Regdale up here. Well, not everybody, but
yeah.
It's really a wonderful place. And it's on this historic estate. If you've seen the Bird Girl statue.
Oh, yeah.
Howard Van Doren Shaw's daughter, I think, did the statue, and it was on the cover of In the Garden of Midnight and Evil or whatever. In the Garden of
Oh.
Midnight.
No, I'm not going to get
Midnight in the Garden of Evil.
Thank you. Good job.
Okay. Ramble.
I don't do that. I don't have words.
And I think the writer might have been John Berendt. I don't know.
Okay.
But whatever. So the statue was made famous by the cover of that book.
Right.
And it backs up to a prairie, so you have all kinds of access to nature, creative community within, and they have a chef that makes you meals, and it's just wonderful. So I did that in January of 2020, and that was when the virus, COVID, was starting to trickle.
Yeah.
And so we had this sense of impending doom. And then when I got back home, it was like the doom just kept escalating.
Yeah. And where are you in your memoir now then?
Well, since I've
or does it end? Or do you have how are you organizing that?
So because I've come up with this latest and greatest, most brilliant idea.
Yeah, sure.
I'm having to rewrite a lot of the material. So I'm basically, instead of having it be a linear narrative, it'll be this abecedarian. And so like A is for anger, and there's a scene about anger. That's not the one about R is for rage.
Right.
You know, so
it's very different.
Yeah, there's very different thing. Anger is mild, rage is something completely different.
Totally.
Or B is for bald, and then that's the scene about getting my hair cut. And friends of ours, Amy and Joe and Maggie, were there for that. And so it's just a matter of having my alphabet not be linear and still be full scene, reflection, and summary. So those three things, reflection, scene, and summary, are very important to memoir. Yeah.
And earlier you had said that a blog is very different than a memoir, and I didn't want to stop the roll at that moment, but I think I understand now, because I'm not a writer. I write, but I don't. I use it as a expressive tool just for myself, or diary-like, write into my paintings, but I obliterate the writing so you can't read, so it doesn't inform. Yeah.
It's the layers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think there have been some blogs that have been successfully turned into books. And I'm thinking Glennon Doyle. I never read her blog, Monastery.
Yeah.
But it was then published as a book. And I'm sure she had to do substantial editing to get it from blog to book.
Right.
And so that's about all I know on it. But I just know that my blog was probably more informative with some reflection, but not really so much scene, because it wasn't like dialogue.
Right.
Very little.
Right.
And I think that for me, successful memoirs allow you to see the person in their life, and a blog is not really that so much.
Oh. Allow someone to see a person in their life. Yeah. I love that.
Okay, good. Because I just made it up.
Well, good. Yeah. That's what we do, right?
Exactly. Fly by the seat of our pants.
Yeah. Well, I think it's kind of fun.
Yes.
Is there something else that you wanted to touch on with?
Oh, gosh. I'm trying to think about the topics we
were talking
about on the way down. Oh, imposter syndrome.
That's what it was. I'm like, there was something that I'm like, feel like a stranger. That's not it.
Imposters.
Yeah.
So I think imposter syndrome it's one of those things that haunts me sometimes, because I think that I know I'm a writer.
Yeah.
But I've only published a few essays, and so I always have to remind myself that Picasso said everyone's an artist.
Oh, did he?
Yes, he did.
Good for him.
Or something like that.
Nice. I agree.
Yeah, exactly. I think they have it in preschools a lot.
Well, that's not the right color. You don't paint a cow purple. Still happens. It's crazy.
Damn it.
Ugh. Sorry. Go ahead.
So I think that believing in yourself is so important, and not thinking that you're a fraud. And I guess I'm thinking about me instead of, you, everybody. But it's more or less like, if I don't believe in myself, who else will?
Yeah.
And so
what tools have you used, or maybe they're not tools, but what have you done in your life to make you feel like you're not? What helps you?
What helps me?
Because I think sharing those things help other people too sometimes.
So I think acknowledging it is huge, and talking with other creative people who also struggle with it as well. Other writers, artists, composers, photographers. And I think that when we hold ourselves up to the standard of like masters, it gets really hard. Like if you constantly compared yourself to the people that are hanging in the Met,
right?
Would you ever even lift a paintbrush?
Right.
Or if I like walked through the walls or through the halls of the Mead Library, would I ever think that I would be able to do that? And they all thought the same thing too.
Yeah. And there was a kernel of something that you said earlier too about when you're releasing, pushing send, and that quick, like, cold fear inside, like, oh, I should have done that, or I have to reread it. Oh, there's a typo. That sort of agitation, I think, is also helps the creative process in some ways too. Like, how do we become better? What is our goal? That's a goal of yourself, right? That wasn't thinking about a master, but that was about yourself as master. Right. And how do I keep pushing myself to get to that place where I'm like, I push send and I'm confident and happy. Does that happen? When does that happen?
So I think for me, it happens if I give myself enough time. So like this most recent time that I hit send and then read, and it was like, oh man, like I had completely missed 2 letters in the alphabet, and it was supposed to be like an A through Z. And I was like, how did I miss R? How did I miss, I think, W, something.
Yeah.
There were 2 letters that were completely missing, and there were 2 S's. And I had submitted it to like 7 literary journals, and I was like, darn it.
Yeah.
And so I rewrote it or, fixed it, and then chose 1. And I said, I've made some changes, tightened it up. Can I resubmit? And they said yes. And then they eventually accepted it. So yay, it's coming out soon.
That's so cool. Really? Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, that's so exciting.
It is. It's
wow.
really great. So, it's a lesson for myself that I have to actually give myself the time to self-edit, proof.
Yeah.
And then hit send.
Yeah.
Rather than just saying, oh, it's perfect. Bing.
Right.
Oops.
Right. Yeah. It's like somewhere in the middle too. Right. And then I kind of like the idea that there are pieces missing though too.
Oh, I know.
Like the metaphor of that, like, is like, oh yeah, of course it is. And
B for boob.
Right.
It's gone.
Right. The B is gone. Right.
Exactly.
Just the process, how our natural process happens sometimes is such a learning experience, even if we don't like what happened. It's
exactly.
Like, oh, that could be a strength as well.
Yes.
Which I always think is fun.
Impetuosity or whatever.
Yeah, right. Yeah. We don't have
I'm just sitting down here making up words.
Right. Yeah. I did have a question because I didn't know you were a photographer. Does your photography at all feel linked to your writing?
That's interesting. I love macro.
So
what I like to do, I love looking at big landscape photography.
Yeah.
But that's not my thing.
Right.
So what I like to do, it's kind of similar to what you do. I like the abstract. So I will like hone in on something so that maybe you're not really sure what you're looking at.
Yeah.
So I think that's could be related to the memoir. It's getting into the truth of something without necessarily seeing the whole thing.
Absolutely.
So I've always liked that, that's like, I don't know, like peeling paint on a wall and you're just not really sure exactly what you're looking at because you're not seeing the whole wall. You're just seeing like a kernel.
Right. It's part of this larger. Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that.
And I think just abstract, looking very much into the heart of something.
Yeah. Yeah. In all of its layers and complexities and feelings and states.
Exactly. Some black and white, a lot of color. Yeah. Of course, because our primary tools now are our phones. So I choose a phone based on how good the camera is.
Wow. Right.
Because I don't care about talking.
Right. Oh, that's so wonderful.
Exactly.
Well, you do run with your phone, though.
Right? Well, I have to just because safety.
Yeah.
And I hate that. I hate that we have to worry about that as women.
Ugh.
That I have to think that, there's a chance that I could be, being chased by one of the antagonists in my short story,
Sure.
Yeah. I definitely think about that a lot, especially because I run out in the country.
Yeah.
And one time I was having like a knee issue, and luckily I did have my phone with me, so I was able to phone a friend to come pick me up.
Wow.
Because there was no way I could complete that run.
Right. Yeah.
But sometimes what I do is take pictures on the runs too. Like, oh, look at that beautiful, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Clover with like the sun behind it or something.
Right. So the process, we could just talk so much about it. But like the process of finding those little pieces like the clover, does the clover then enter into your story at all? Or is it just about the similar process?
Probably the similar process.
Yeah. Yeah.
There might be, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So I know I have a coffee table book in me.
Totally.
But I don't want to say what it is.
Yeah.
But
no, don't.
But I've done tons of research. Yeah, there's this coffee table book in me.
Yep. Oh, yeah. And well, thank you so much for being on here and talking about yourself in all of its wonderful, beautiful expressions.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
It's been fun. It's been a little bit terrifying.
Good, maybe.
Yes, yeah. Good. Well, because normally I talk about myself to myself, by myself, and with myself.
Yeah.
Not in front of other selves.
Yeah. It's brave. I appreciate you being here and sharing all that you did.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
It's been fun.
Good. And if people wanted to get a hold of you, your beautiful business, Bonjour Massage.
Oh, yes, there is Bonjour Massage. So that's on like Facebook.
Okay.
They can find that.
Okay.
But the writing, you'll have links on your website, I'm sure.
Okay. Can you share them here with us too?
Well, so KathleenQuigleyWrites.com. But when I get home, I actually have to reserve that domain name because it was so funny when you were saying there are no other Kathleen Quigleys. Well, you know what? There's an artist down in Texas, and she stole KathleenQuigley.com. And I also actually have a sister who has my exact same name.
Oh, funny.
Half sister.
Right. Of course.
Yes.
But there is no one like you, Kathleen.
No, and I've never met her, so who knows?
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
In the Act is produced in the studios at Mead Public Library in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. More information on the web at meadpl.org.